Minister, if I could start with you. You yourself said that you've had better report cards, that you've read it, that you'll do better in future. Many of the people in this room, the people that have responded to the Mood of the Boardroom survey, you've dropped out of the top 10 MPs in terms of their rankings. Why do you think you didn't rank more highly?
Because we're having an ugly recovery and people are feeling it. People rightly, after what has now been several years in which inflation's been high, interest rates soared, growth declined, want to see recovery. I am the face of finance and economic growth, and until that recovery is broadly felt and sustained, I expect that people will continue to challenge me, as they should, because I share their impatience for getting the recovery that we need. I stand by the approach our government has taken in terms of doing necessary fiscal repair, making essential reforms to our consenting system, approaching the energy system with vigour, ensuring we are driving longer term productivity by encouraging capital intensity in our firms, reforming the education system. My view is that we are doing the things that business want us to be doing, but you haven't seen all the results yet. So we need to drive harder, we need to drive faster, and keep listening to you.
When you asked to be made the Minister for Economic Growth this year, did you perceive any political risk to that?
Well, I'm always conscious that government creates the conditions for growth, but ultimately it is other actors in the economy, whether it's firms, entrepreneurs, workers, who individually contribute to growth occurring. But we back New Zealand. So I am confident that with the right conditions in place, we have every reason to grow. So I think that was the right commitment to make. And I also would highlight there's been a lot of talk about Q2. In Q1, we grew 3 times as fast as Australia and twice as fast as the Treasury were forecasting. Unfortunately, it didn't make quite so many headlines. But consensus economists continue to forecast that our recovery is ongoing and we will see overall annual growth this year. We don't take that for granted, but we see every reason with lower interest rates and a better fiscal environment, clear regulatory approach from the government, that businesses can have confidence to invest and grow.
Barbara, how much are you looking forward to having a policy to campaign on?
Yeah, really good. I'm quite positive about the way in which our Labor team is pulling together the policy. Anybody in this room who knows how Labor Party sets up its policy, it's really grassroots. Particularly when you're in opposition, you don't have the resources that, when you're in government, you do. So we've been leaning a lot on the resources that have been offered to us in order to pull together the policies that we will be taking to the election. So a few more weeks to go and we will start to come up with it.
Would Labor borrow and spend more than the current government? Is that the essence of your difference?
Well, let's put this into perspective first. National Party has borrowed more and spent more, and that's since when we were last in government. Ultimately, there are very big challenges. You've set out a number of those challenges in the survey today, and it will require the government investing in it. So what Labor will come out around our borrowing, our spending, our expenses, how our assets are looked after, we will have that as part of our fiscal plan and policies going forward. But ultimately, it's time for the stopping of this chopping and changing. And I do give my good faith approach to the Minister. There are some bits there which she had reached out to us. We need to work on that, and I think that's come quite clearly through the boardroom again this year.
Yeah, which is a good segue into a question for both of you. There's a really common theme in today's report that we need as a country to hold a pro-growth line, to sharpen delivery on long-term projects and set out long-term vision in a more bipartisan way. How would you both respond to that? Minister, perhaps you first.
Well, we do need to, because there are some challenges that have remained elephants in the room for too long because of political potshots. I put superannuation top of the table there. I think there is growing consensus among New Zealanders that the settings on superannuation will have to change in line with our demographics, and that KiwiSaver and private savings must play a more important role in future. But how we grapple with that requires both sides of politics to be grown-ups and not just take cheap political potshots and scare those who are reliant on superannuation today. Equally, when it comes to things like reforms to the Commerce Act, reforms to the Resource Management Act, reforms to the Holidays Act, for those reforms to give you business real confidence, you need to know they're enduring. Well, we've done the hard, detailed mahi, Barbara, and I invite you to pick it up and put your Labour stamp on it too.
I'd just like to add, we also did the hard mahi when it came to the RMA, and we repealed it. We had 2 pieces of legislation, and then the government came back, put the RMA back in, then repealed it and put more legislation in. So ultimately, when it comes to bipartisanship, there are a lot of people in the room and in the communities that I'm talking to, they seriously just want us to get along and just do the job. There will be, say, 80-20 that we will agree on. I think the most important thing, which I spoke about in that disconnection piece in my speech, we are the centre, National and Labour together. We are the middle. We have the majority of votes. In order to stop some of perhaps the swinging and the swaying that has come through all governments, we need to find those spaces where we do agree and work together on them. And I don't say that lightly.
Minister, you have mentioned superannuation and also KiwiSaver. A question from the floor, as you can see. What is your policy for growing KiwiSaver?
Well, I'd just like to remind everyone that in this year's budget, we increased contributions for KiwiSaver starting from 1 April next year, with another increment of increase scheduled for 2 years after that, bringing total contributions to 8% between employers and employees. That signals a very clear direction, which is that we do want to support New Zealanders to be able to invest in KiwiSaver. It's also the case that doing that involves real income sacrifices at a time when the cost of living is top of mind for most. And so that was certainly, I think, a brave political decision to do the right thing despite challenging economic conditions. And as we look to the future, I think KiwiSaver is going to be a source not only of private retirement funds, but actually a source of critical investment into this economy here and creating growth for the future. So I back it and I want to see it get better and better.
Barbara?
So KiwiSaver is obviously one of Labour's legacy policies through Sir Michael Cullen. So Michael Cullen believed that he had some unfinished business there. And Labour, when we come out with our policies coming into the election, we will have a KiwiSaver policy to announce. Ultimately, I agree with many of the things the Minister has said. But however, the difference is my concern is for those sole traders and for those self-employed. When you cut the government contribution in half, what incentive is for them to enrol in KiwiSaver? Because we know we have over 90% of salary and wage earners in KiwiSaver. It's that self-employed sole trader, which is about 65%. If we really want to use KiwiSaver capital to reinvest into New Zealand, then we need to grow who is in KiwiSaver, and sometimes it will require some incentives to do that.
Minister, what will, in a similar question from the floor, I might add, what will success look like for you in terms of growth, both by the end of this year and by next year's election?
Well, the problem with stats is they come out several months after the things have occurred. So you won't know whether I've been successful this year until stats have done their updates and undoubtedly their quarterly revisions, which have become a theme.
Do you think the stats didn't reflect sort of the more anecdotal evidence and attitudes prevalent throughout New Zealand?
No, I think it was clear to everyone in New Zealand in that Q2 period from April. It was very clear across the community. Certainly people in this room were saying to me, things are feeling ropey in the economy this quarter. So that wasn't a surprise. I'm simply reflecting the fact that stats have, for each of the last few updates, had to revise their quarterly data, which is not unusual, but that is the reality. So success is obviously sustained growth. There's a reason why we're on that mission, because I think too many of our political conversations in the past have been about how do we divide that pie we have in more intricate and clever ways. And we really want the focus to be on, but how do we make this a wealthier country? How do we make our firms more productive? How do we encourage more investment, create better paying jobs? And that is a growth conversation. So it is the right conversation to be happening. And, you know, it's not just me being the world's optimist. There are a consensus of economists saying we are still on track to grow this year. But it does require you in this room. And so I am humble about that. We need to give you confidence, and we need you to be driving that growth alongside us.
Barbara, ratings agencies Fitch and S&P have been clear they want to see continued fiscal consolidation. Labor has floated increased borrowing. Two questions. A, is this wise? And B, would you be comfortable with a credit rating downgrade at the cost of greater investment?
I'm never comfortable with any rating downgrade, for the reason being that that filters through to the rest of the economy with higher borrowing costs, both for the private and for the government sector. But ultimately, where Labor will land will be part of our fiscal plan. We need smarter investment. And many of you in this room, you borrow for your businesses. You generally borrow for an asset or for a piece of machinery that will actually produce more goods or services. So you understand what it comes to looking at a balance sheet, making it balance, and using that balance sheet the full way, using it to achieve the vision and the strategy that you want. So Labor will do the same. But ultimately for us, there are things we need to invest in. And if we want to keep the continuum, we want to keep that certainty, there will be some parts that we keep, and there will be some parts which we will clearly signal that we might have to step back from in order to make those books balance.
Would you be comfortable with a downgrade?
No, I said that very start. I would not be comfortable with the downgrade because of the wider economic pressures.
Thanks. Minister, the Treasury has said continued cuts will be required to hit your goal of reducing spending as a share of the economy. How much is too much?
Well, I think New Zealanders, and certainly it's reflected in the survey findings, agree that government needs to be much more efficient in the way it spends taxpayers' money. It needs to drive more value from the investments we make. And what we've shown over the last two budgets is that you can deliver a lot of saving, 23 billion in our first budget, 21 billion in our second budget, and drive investment into the places that we want to prioritise. Education, the biggest learning support investment in 20 years for children with additional needs, achieved in the context of a tighter fiscal path and a lower operating allowance than we forecast. We can drive more funding into health services and into infrastructure, but man, oh man, we can't get sloppy with every corner and nook and cranny of the state. And I'm sorry, Barbara, but that is your party's track record. Tax more, spend more wastefully, borrow more. And we are setting a very different direction.
Barbara, we've talked a bit about bipartisanship. We've talked about long-term visions and the need for us as a country to adapt, I guess, long-term policies and approaches. Can I ask, will you reinstate the ban on oil and gas exploration if you are re-elected to government next year? And when will the seesawing stop?
So the seesawing stops when we provide certainty in again, most of those key areas. We have said that we are going to reinstate the oil and gas ban. We've said that actually last year. But ultimately for us though, that is only a small part of the equation. There is a wider part to the energy strategy that is needed. And so Labor we've said it as well at the beginning of this year, Dr. Megan Woods has, that we want to work with the government on the energy strategy.
See, that to me isn't real bipartisanship, because what the energy sector have said to us is, yes, please look at reforms to drive investment and generation. Be careful how you do that, noting that parts of the market are working very effectively. But please acknowledge the fuel issue. There will never be enough sunshine, rain, and wind to power us on the days when those things aren't happening. Gas and coal are part of our future, and gas has half the emissions of coal, and it would give huge certainty to the country if Labor were able to say, of course, pragmatically, a bit of gas exploration is needed for energy policy certainty.
The problem is, though, with gas exploration, and I know you are conflicted in this space, is that it takes so long to bring that into actual operation. And in the last 20 years, power companies have spent billions and billions of dollars in those expirations. What we have said is when we brought the oil and gas ban in, is that we will honour the licences you have. However, we are looking at generation, storage, firming. I've spent 2 days with one of our largest gentailers looking at infrastructure in the South Island. There are opportunities there. It just requires some regulation changes. So again, Minister, open for the conversation. We said publicly that we want to work with you. We need to work with you. Yes, there is a small gas shortage, but we also need to look at prioritising who should actually
rather large
access
shortage.
that. Who should access that? My apologies, but who should access that? So we do want to work together, but that is a small part of a wider problem around what we should be doing competitively.
Well, I disagree.
Oh, fire away.
And, I have spoken with so many businesses up and down the country who have been viciously affected by the shortage of gas and the electricity spikes that have occurred. And they can see plainly, if the oil and gas ban hadn't been introduced, there would have been enough investment certainty that we would be able to get more gas out of wells right now. Now, that was a bad decision. It would be good if Labor owned it. Obviously, you're not going to. But as we look to the future, you can talk about Lake Onslow type battery solutions as much as you like. But actually what that did was hold back investment in many types of generation. And it's also the fact that that won't deliver quickly enough. So we actually do need thermal capacity. The Huntley Agreement is a good one, but gas and coal are going to be part of our future, and no amount of climate change signalling will change that if we want affordable energy, which is critical to the growth of an economy. If we want advanced manufacturing, if we want productivity in our regions, we need affordable energy, and you can't get that without gas and coal.
And we don't deny there needs to be a place for gas. However, the time for it to actually come into pipeline is a long time. So we need to still look at other solutions to ensure that we are actually firming up the energy that we need.
What solutions are you talking about?
So I'm talking to retailers, I am talking to the Energy Retailers Association, to different energy companies. They are telling me in confidence, and because of competitive reasons, as to what they believe should happen, and Labor will come out with our energy policy.
Is that Labor or Green parties driving that?
No, this is Labor. So, unlike the National Party likes to swing on either side, this is Labor. We have obligations. We have international obligations that we need to deal with. If you're saying today that we don't need to deal with them, then that's for you.
We do need to. And imagine if we were getting half as many emissions out of Huntley because we were able to use gas.
Barbara, oil and gas is one example. Gang patches is another that you have talked about. What is one or more measures from the coalition government that you don't particularly like but won't change?
Don't particularly like and don't change.
Well, won't change, yes.
Won't change.
So you've mentioned that you won't repeal the gang patch legislation, for instance. You've previously said
Won't
that.
repeal it.
Yeah. So what else do you not like, but that will you not change if you were to be elected?
That's actually a hard question, Murray.
That's what I'm here for.
And to be fair, just last week we had an example where we supported the government's changes to Family Boost because it had failed to get the outreach that it needed. So you do see elements of support from Labor, even though we don't support the Family Boost policy itself because we think it's administratively heavy, and also it's not reaching everybody that it should do. If you had an ECE 20 hours free policy, we put our money on the table last week and we supported the Minister's bill.
I'll just clarify those questions. A lot of these questions are actually from Audrey Young. I can't claim them all.
Oh, Audrey.
And we love
Where is
Audrey.
Audrey?
And that was one of hers. This has been mentioned from the crowd. Minister, not just, I guess, from the audience, but a question on behalf of Herald columnist Matthew Hooton.
I know where this is going. He's been writing the same column for 3 years.
And doesn't he do great business for me? How safe is Christopher Luxon?
He's completely safe. The thing that really struck me when I read the report was how invisible it is to many, the coalition management that he deftly does behind the scenes to create stability out of 3 quite different parties. He's doing that extremely well. But also the underestimation of how he has put the right talent in the right places in our cabinet and has backed people in roles to succeed. He is a leader that empowers people and drives success. And I think if you were to speak to Erica or Simeon or Mitch today, they would say to you that a large part of their success is down to the Prime Minister's backing and support.
Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter. Today's mood of the boardroom survey in terms of both yourself and Christopher Luxon falling out of the top 10. That's only likely to increase that chatter about change.
I don't think so.
I
respect the 150 people in this room deeply, but you are not broadly representative of the 5 million people we serve.
Do you want to be Prime Minister?
No.
Never?
No. I'm doing
Are you ruling out a run for Prime Minister?
I'm not running for Prime Minister.
I'm not asking that.
Yeah, no. How many different ways do I need to say it? Are people
cool.
with me? I think I've been quite clear, and I'll tell you why. Because my belief for anyone coming into politics, I get asked advice about entering politics all the time, and I say, look, don't go with a role in mind, because there's a lot of luck and timing involved. Go with a sense of purpose and what you want to achieve for the country. And I'm in a role where I can, together with my colleagues, achieve a huge amount for the country. And success for me is that this is a long-term government, because we can't get it done in a term, team. And if you throw it up and put the other guys in charge, that puts the country at risk. I've lost count of the number of talented New Zealanders who will tell me that they will leave if we don't get our act together and win with a stonking victory.
They've already left.
And so I tell you that purpose for me, that mission is the mission, which is to be an excellent finance minister to support our Prime Minister and Cabinet to make the change this country needs.
Barbara, it's been reported that you have no ambition to be the Prime Minister either. Is that still the case?
Still the case.
Nobody wants to be the Prime Minister.
Well, there's a question of who's going to roll who first.
Jane Jones, where are you? Barbara, as we know, you worked as an IRD official in the office of Stuart Nash when he was the Revenue Minister.
He had a job while I was his advisor, and he understands that.
When he was the Revenue Minister.
I think he needs you back on deck.
So you worked in his office when he was the Revenue Minister. Did you learn anything from him other than what not to do?
Stuart is an incredibly passionate person. When he finds something that he really wants to achieve, he will go for it. My lesson with Stuart is that even people who are given great responsibility, they can trip up. But the major thing that I have learnt, both from Stuart, because again, it was a very hard job, is that take accountability for it, apologise and do better. That's the same message that I give to Stuart even now.
I think that's a very fair assessment.
Barbara, Thomas Coughlin, the Herald political editor, has suggested Labor's debating having a minimalist capital gains tax. And we heard from Fran in terms of the approach or the response from this room that when asked bluntly, we push back. When put in context, there is some support. National has destroyed all other CGT policies put forward by Labor. Is luck on your side this time?
There's nothing about luck when it comes to politics. And to Thomas Pipos, again, you probably have one of the most experienced practitioners who's writing on this as part of the mood of the boardroom. Very small story. Thomas, I was scared of you, by the way. As a young graduate at IRD, your reputation preceded you. But ultimately, where Labor goes with our tax policy, we will announce it with good time, because we know New Zealand needs certainty. The other thing I can commit to is that when we win and we bring in a tax policy, we will go through the generic tax policy process, which I believe, and I've said in my maiden speech, should be the standard for most government policies where you can do it. That means there is a consultation phase, a very specific consultation phase with many of the practitioners here in this room and outside of this room. And that's because tax is hard and it's complex. There are unintended consequences, so you need to work through them carefully.
And what will Chloe Swarbrick have to say about all of that? Because I tell you, the thing that could put our economic recovery at significant risk is uncertainty about our tax settings on capital and on investment. And I find it very hard to believe that you won't open the door very wide, given the Greens have said that that is their essential mission and purpose for government. A hoard of billions of dollars of additional taxes, wealth taxes, CGT. And so I think the risk that you run on your tax policy is you can claim it's as narrow as possible, but Chloe and Marama will open the door wide open.
See, the difference between this government and the next Labour government is we will be the leaders. We are ultimately the leaders. We will have the majority of votes. We held a coalition government with the Greens and New Zealand First, and everybody knew that Jacinda Ardern was the Prime Minister. So there is ultimately, again, I go back to that earlier point, in the middle, the two biggest parties, we can work together on some things to ensure that we hold that balance to what most of Middle New Zealand needs. However, when it comes to when we're in a coalition government with whomever that is, the Labour Party will be the leaders in that government.
We are running out of time.
I
You'll
didn't
surely
see
have...
that from Hipkins on Rawiri YTT. And so I
don't see that from
question
Christopher Luxon
that analysis.
for
We are running out of time, and you will each have 2 minutes to sum up shortly. But that leads into a question to you, Nicola. How much are you looking forward to campaigning on Labor's tax policies?
I can't wait.
I'm surprised.
They've already started their attack ads.
The reality,
Could I ask if National had governed alone or close to it?
Yeah.
What would you have done differently in the last 18 months?
Oh, good question.
Look, I think you would have seen less focus on Māori-related issues. That's a blunt but bold assessment. I think that you would have seen us move some pieces of legislation with more pace because not as many compromises would have been required on the way through. And I think you would have seen a focus that is not dissimilar in the goals for New Zealand, but that from time to time would have been able to operate with a specificity and pace that is not the reality of coalition government. I want to give some credit, though, Murray, to our coalition partners, because it is the case that we worked very constructively around that cabinet table. And I, for one, have had policy proposals I've put forward that have been challenged from my friend on the right, David, and my friend somewhat to the left, Winston, and the policies have emerged the better for it. And that is the strength of a good coalition government, and it is why I think New Zealanders have continued to vote for coalition governments, because they appreciate that test and challenge. I think we're managing it very well. We are delivering a massive reform agenda across RMA, across the Commerce Act, across energy, across education, fixing a health system. And we are doing that cohesively, and it is something that looks a lot easier from the outside than it is on the inside.
Last question for you, Barbara. Could you please say something nice about Nicola?
That is actually quite easy, right? We are both women, finance spokesperson, Minister of Finance. We have a number of women finance leaders in this room. It's easy for me to be able to respect you for that, because we know, we were just talking about it earlier before, the challenges that come with holding a household down, with being able to be in a job which is in the spotlight, in a job where you're constantly being attacked. But I will always respect Nicola. I will always respect the office of the Minister of Finance, because actually those are generally the values that everyone has. And when we lose touch with those values, that's when our country will go downwards.
And last question for you, Minister. Can you please say something nice about Barbara?
No.
Well, right back at you on all of
it's 11.
Yeah.
And what I'd add is I do admire Barbara in the midst of a party that, in my observation, isn't brilliant with numbers. And you're having to be the technocrat who gets everyone to focus on the page. I'm glad you've got the experience juggling your 8 children, because I hate to think what it's like juggling the members of the Labour Party caucus on tax. And I sincerely admire the fact that you're continuing to forge ahead with confidence, despite what must be some really challenging backroom conversations. I have appreciated the tone you've set in our relationship in Parliament, the tone that you've set here today, and I believe that you are genuine in your intent.
Closing statements, 2 minutes each. Barbara, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. What has been clear from the survey today, and from the conversations actually I've had with many of you in the room, what we need is leadership and a clear vision and plan. decisions that will set us up for the future. National has made big promises on the economy. They were elected to make things better, but things have been worse. And although you may not see it in your day-to-day, I see it in my day-to-day in some of the communities I serve, in some of the most poorest areas of our country. We need all of us to work together to ensure that that degradation does not continue. And it does mean we have to work in bipartisan ways. It does mean that sometimes when we have a difference of opinion, we set it out clearly and we show that. But in order to do that, you need to have the maturity and the leadership in order to do so. Labor wants an economy that works for all, and I'm committed that when I'm your next Minister of Finance, that I will do that.
Thank you, Barbara. Nicola?
Our government has the opportunity to make the reforms to our regulatory settings, our investment settings, our trade settings, that in many cases are long overdue, and that inform the low productivity growth that New Zealand has experienced for a number of years. We're getting on with that challenging reform work in the midst of a cyclical recovery that has been crunchy and has been hard. We are now at the point where interest rates have fallen significantly for a year, where that Fast Track Act is working and getting massive private sector projects out the door, where structured literacy is in our classrooms, where the Commerce Act reforms are on the table, where our energy proposals will be released within weeks. We are about to introduce a fundamental change to the Resource Management Act, the most structural reform we've seen in 30 years. We're getting on with public-private partnerships. We're managing our health and education services in a way that is efficient and targeted. The work is happening, and we are all impatient. But to reap real rewards, you have to do deep and hard work, and our government is up for that. We are doing it. The worst thing that you could do for New Zealand businesses is put that at risk with change. Let's keep on the journey.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you to thank
The Honourable Barbara Edmonds and the Honourable Nicola Willis.